right, folks, welcome back to an impromptu episode of Talkin Badgers. And on today's show, we're going to be diving headfirst into the transfer portal wish list for the Wisconsin football program. Now that the transfer portal is officially open and the Badgers have already seen 13 players of the scholarship nature announce their departures, Luke Fickell and his staff have some pretty heavy decisions to make in order to rebuild this roster coming off 5-7 season. From quarterback to cornerback, this roster has no shortage of holes that they need to fill. No Diddy, and we're breaking it all down, and we're going to talk about what Wisconsin needs, where they've struggled, and how they can bounce back heading into 2025. So let's get into it. I think the first and most obvious need that we're going to talk about here is going to be at quarterback. I know that there is a desire by the staff, the fan base, everybody to not have to continue to dip into the transfer portal at quarterback. I mean, obviously that makes a ton of sense. But the reality is that even though there are some talented young players like Mabry Mettauer in this room, Carter Smith incoming, you even have Braden Locke returning as a potential depth piece. Obviously not someone you can lean on as a starter. You're going to have to go back to the portal and add somebody who is capable of playing right now. There are just too many question marks at quarterback, especially with a guy like Tyler Van Dyke, who this staff is, open to bringing back. But how do you put all of your eggs in that basket coming off of a torn ACL? This is someone who's not going to be able to practice during the spring, and you're not going to be entirely sure what that injury timeline recovery looks like. It's my understanding that Luke Fickell has extended the opportunity for him to stay at Wisconsin, rehab, basically be around the program and potentially be an option for Wisconsin this coming season. But that offer also comes with no guarantees. They have to protect themselves against really a repeat of what we just saw this past season. You cannot be in a place where you only have so many scholarship quarterbacks. And, all due respect to Braden Locke, you know what you have there now. You have a large enough sample size to know he's not your guy. Not a starting caliber guy. If he's a backup, I think you can live with that. I think you get by with that. But quarterback is going to be a need again. Really like what Carter Smith brings from an intangible standpoint. Think he, in a lot of ways is what Luke Fickell wants from the quarterback position moving forward. But how do you expect a true freshman to step in from day one and lead a team that needs, a difference maker at the position? I think that's too much to ask. With Jeff Grimes coming in here, implementing, another offensive system, I think you're going to have to dip back into the portal again, find an experienced option, someone who's more of a plug and play kind of guy, give the younger quarterbacks another season of, time to develop. And then, from there on, hopefully this will be the last time that we're going to have to dip into the portal for a little while. If everything goes the way that you hope it does. Obviously, probably one of the biggest pieces to this is who is the team going to hire as quarterbacks coach? Grimes, offensive line, tight ends guy. They're going to need somebody who can and has a history of developing quarterbacks. That's pretty much non-negotiable. Someone with some experience maybe as a passing game coordinator is going to be big. But I think that quarterback is and should be every year. I think it would be malpractice not to explore what is available in the transfer portal at quarterback every season to see if there are upgrades, especially in a what have you done for me lately sport like college football is. But unfortunately, I do think quarterback is going to have to sit atop your wish list. And, until you find yourself in a position where that no longer is such a glaring need. Another offensive position, I think, I don't know if I'm in the minority on this, but I think this is a critically important position to address, is going to be tight end. I mean, yes, it's a new offensive system coming in again, and you bring back some contributors here. You got Tucker Ashcraft, JT Seagreaves played a little bit. You've got some young talented players, Grant Steck, Rob Booker. Like there are some guys here, but there is not a lot of production. Rylan Nowakowski is walking out that door. That's someone the staff leaned on quite a bit. As a blocker, a lot of those things. And we know that Luke Fickell wants to play a lot more heavier personnel, and you're gonna need some reliable tight ends. I think Tucker Ashcraft gets you one of them. He's got enough versatility to be able to offer you a few different things. He can be a pass catcher. I think he improved a lot as a blocker. JT Seavegreaves, he improved a little bit as the year goes on, but I don't think there's any world where you can enter the season with just the remnants of what's left in a room that gave you little to no production this past season, and then decide that they're going to be an integral piece of what you're doing, under Grimes moving forward. I think that tight end is going to be huge. I think at the bare minimum, you've got to bring in somebody who is a quality run blocking tight end. I think you've got some young guys that could potentially fill some of that pass catching role. We'll see. But tight end is a room where I think you have more than enough able bodies in there. But coming off the season you cannot, in my opinion, rely on that internal growth alone. I think you got to introduce more competition. Ideally, a veteran who can come in and kind of step into some of those snaps being vacated by Riley Nowakowski, especially if we're going to be playing some two, or even as Luke Fickell mentioned when talking about what he wanted in an offensive coordinator, he even mentioned 3 tight end sets. And I don't think right now you've got 3 tight ends you could put on a field and be happy about what you're working with. Gonna flip over to the other side of the ball here. I think that there is an argument to be made that you could really point to any position group and make an argument for there being a need there. This is a 5-7 football team. They were quite frankly, they were not that good. So I think relying strictly on internal returning pieces is not going to be enough, but you also don't want to go get too transfer portal happy, because you're not getting an opportunity to establish long relationships with them. You don't know how they're going to be in terms of locker room fits. You don't know if they're just bag chasing and what that's going to do for the culture, how that affects the pieces that you have recruited and that you are trying to develop and you have built relationships with. It's a really delicate balance that you've got to strike here. And especially with the 2023 recruiting class damn near ceasing to exist at this point after, almost everybody in that class has entered the portal, save for a few pieces like Tucker Ashcraft, Christian Allegro, a couple others. It's tough because you have to fill those voids. There are roster spots you're going to have to fill from a depth perspective. But I do think you got to be really careful this year and maybe take some of your bigger swings at a couple key spots, and then maybe provide some additional opportunities to a few of your younger guys that might not, air quotes, be ready and that might still need a little bit of time to develop. Because as we're seeing in college football right now, if these guys aren't getting opportunities in the first, maybe 2 seasons, and they don't see that path forward, or you've continued to recruit a position really well, which you should always, continue to stack talent, they're going to be more prone to seeking greener pastures at this point. That's just the reality. So I think you've got to be really selective, but there are a few spots where I think it's going to be non-negotiable. So defensively, to get started, gonna just start with edge rusher. This is a staff that went into the portal last offseason. Got Leon Lowry, John Pius. A lot was made of the ways that they were supposed to be able to affect this pass rush. And, Luke Fickell and his staff talked about how much different they thought things would look with guys like this. Quite frankly, it did not materialize. Together, the pair combined for 50 total tackles, 33 pressures, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks from two guys. Both of your starters, that's just not anywhere near good enough. And so that kind of puts you in a spot because, this time around, in my opinion, you absolutely have to go back to the transfer portal again. But they have to do a significantly better job of identifying impact talent on the edge. It just is not good enough. This is a unit that was one of the least productive in all of the Power 4. According to Game on Paper, they were ranked 128th out of 134 teams in havoc rate. So, yeah, this is an edge group where you can't just look at what you have as returning pieces and be like, okay, we're going to turn it over to them now. You have to go out and get at least, in my opinion, one guy who can step into meaningful snaps right away. Because I do think you want to leave the opportunity open to get some of these younger guys on the field. Again, striking that balance. You're expected to bring back Daryl Peterson. I think you know what he is at this point. It's a guy you can can rely on. He's an above average player probably at the position. Aaron Witt has the opportunity to return. It sounds like that is likely. There's with the desire to get bigger on defense and more specifically, in the front seven. I think Aaron Witt's someone who's going to play a pretty big role again this coming season. Someone who can set the edge, good run stopper. A lot to like there. I thought that you had guys like Sebastian Cheeks who really flashed and, should probably warrant a lot better opportunity this coming season. Obviously, Thomas Heiberger is someone who was on pace to play a role before he got hurt. Analu Lafayette is somebody who could be an option, but you've got to go out and get one guy who is at the very least going to compete to start for you. As Badger notes, as we reported yesterday, Max Rieger is somebody who from Louisville, edge rusher that they're interested in and offered formally this week. He's going to be on an official visit to Madison this week, so we'll see what materializes there. I think he offers kind of the size that you have in like an Aaron Witt, but I think a little bit more explosion. So that would be an interesting person that I think would really potentially round out that room, but they're going to do their due diligence. Edge rusher is a position I think you absolutely have to go and get one guy that you can plug and play, starter caliber quality, or at least someone who can push for it, and then open up the door to opportunities for your younger guys. They have to see the field if you're going to continue to try to recruit and develop these guys. Next for me is going to be defensive line. Probably the most obvious of all of these, and quite frankly, one that every single offseason is probably going to be on this list. Because every team in America wants to get better, more impactful talent, more depth at the defensive line, which is the problem. Recruiting defensive linemen is already as hard as it gets, so you have to develop that internally. But in the transfer portal, it becomes even harder because, especially at, I don't want to say the level Wisconsin's at, but you're having to pull from the lower levels. We saw them hit on an Elijah Hills last year. That was really encouraging. But I think in a lot of cases, you're going to have to go to those lower levels to try and pull them up. The Badgers have lost James Thompson Jr. to the transfer portal, Kurt Neal to the transfer portal. Those are guys that were productive. They played meaningful snaps for this program during the course of their time here. That needs to be replaced. You potentially bring back a Ben Barton, who I think is a nice rotational guy. Brandon Lane might be in a position to play a little bit more snaps. Obviously, Dylan Johnson, somebody who is an obvious candidate to step into a big role, but I think you have to go out and get at least two bodies in this room that you think can play right away. Easier said than done because everybody's looking for the same thing. But if you're Wisconsin, I don't think that there are enough bodies you could throw at this room until you find enough that hit. Really as many as you can go out and acquire that you think could meaningfully push for snaps. I'm all about adding competition and bodies to this room because defensive line was not nearly good enough this year. I think that was painfully obvious. They got to get bigger. They have to have more people that you can roll in because this is a room that got pushed around. This past season, the run defense was putrid. There's no two ways around it. They got pushed around. Defensive line is a spot where we've got to see greater improvement, and it's going to be really hard when you don't have guys like Kurt Neal and James Thompson Jr. to kind of establish that floor and allow you to build from it. You're having to reestablish that floor, and I think it's really hard, especially when you're bringing along some young guys. So defensive line, major need. The last one I'm going to highlight, obviously, I think, again, you could make an argument for damn near any position, and there are others that I think also would warrant having, additions made, and they will. But the big one for me, lastly, is going to be cornerback. A lot of question marks, a lot of snaps walking out the door. RJ Delancey was a guy he brought in last year. Obviously, he was a complimentary rotational guy. He's gone. Nazir Forkreen really was a nice portal find for this program and this coaching staff. He gave Wisconsin a lot the last couple of years. He is gone, opens up a ton of snaps. Still don't know what's going to happen with Ricardo Hallman. There is an opportunity for him to return. I think that would be massive for this defense. Obviously, we know what he brings to the table, but especially if he's gone, then you really have to make several additions at corner. But we do have Xavier Lucas. Do I believe that programs are going to be trying to lure him into the portal? Absolutely. Tremendously talented player. Huge recruiting win from this past cycle. Just the prototype. NFL level measurables, we'll see. But he's an excellent starting point if you're rebuilding this room. Kind of build around him. Hopefully you have an opportunity to pair him with Ricardo Hallman, and that would make things a lot better. But you look around and, you lost to Jonas DeClona, you lost Amari Snowden. Like, the 2023 class effectively walking out the door has just left this room incredibly, incredibly thin. I think you're going to have to go out and look for a few meaningful contributors. I mean, Max Lofi played nickel. He's gone. Don't know what the staff's plans are going to be with Austin Brown. Is he someone they're looking to keep at kind of in that nickel corner spot? Are they looking to put him back at safety this year with Braden Moore walking out the door and Hunter Wohler graduating? Preston Zachman could return. I think as we're talking about this, I think I'm talking myself just as much into safety. And there are some interesting players already kind of tied to Wisconsin in the portal. Some in-state ties at safety. So I think that they have some potential solutions there. But, what they do with an Austin Brown is going to be interesting. Either way, I think Wisconsin, you have to replenish depth. Number one, that's the hard part. High school recruiting is not any less important today than it was before. You need to bring in and develop your own guys and retain them. And that's really hard to do when you're in a what have you done for me lately sport like college football. It's just, I don't know what the right answer is, but when you lose as many guys from the 2023 class as you did, now you have to go to the portal just to replenish bodies in there. And that's just a tough spot to be in. That's another position in college football where everybody is interested in adding additional cornerback depth. It's just too important with the way that teams are playing offensively nowadays. When your base is effectively always going to be the nickel now. That's pretty much gonna do it for me. I just want to do a little quick hitter here. Boy's been on paternity leave here the last couple of weeks. That's why me and the fellows have not been able to coordinate schedules. That's 100% been on me. Recording this one as we speak, just driving on the road because it maybe is the first time I've had to collect my own thoughts in a few days, and just wanted to get a little something out. Remember, no one in the transfer portal is going to be a perfect product. I think that is nobody enters without holes. So there are going to be no plug and play perfect savior options available, especially not to Wisconsin in all of this. But it is absolutely necessary. So hopefully the staff can kind of, again, strike that really delicate balance between bringing in impactful guys that you need at the top of your depth chart, and then maybe having to rely on some younger guys to fill out some of that depth so that you can continue to build something the right way, the way that we know that this staff desires to do. Really hard to do nowadays, but it absolutely needs to be done at a place like Wisconsin. And so they're going to have to go to the portal. They have to replace depth. I think that Luke Fickell made it pretty clear in spring football. He wants to know pretty early who his starters are so that he can open up a lot more opportunities for the young guys to showcase themselves early and get a better idea of what he has. And with 16 of his 24 signees from this recruiting class coming in early, I think it allows him to, maybe identify what their strengths are a little bit more quickly, which is important so that maybe they don't have to rely, on that spring transfer portal window where you're not likely to get anybody who is more than a depth piece. Again, there are more position groups that you could make an argument for people from the portal. I think, all of the names that are leaving are not yet in either. So take everything with a grain of salt. But as we enter day one of the transfer portal window opening, those are a couple of position groups that I think are going to be really, really critical to add bodies and more importantly, meaningful, experienced players at. All right, that'll do it for us here. Appreciate y'all taking time out of your week, and we'll catch you back here hopefully, in the coming days or week, having a roundtable with the fellas.